Hey, welcome to another video on Vadi's guards. Today I want to do a video on the middle guards. This is going to be the first of at least two, maybe three videos on the middle guards because there's quite a lot to talk about them. So for today I'm going to talk about, first of all, I'm talking about the category of middle guards as a whole, why I use it, what's included in that, show the guards, show what Vadi says about them, as well as the three that are extrapolated and why we extrapolate them, and to talk a little bit about some of the attacks that you can do from each of them, which will then feed into later videos as quite an important foundation. First of all, middle guards, right? First thing to note, as I mentioned in the previous video, Vadi does not categorize the guards in the same way that I do, right? He gives us the category of low guards. He talks about low guards as a whole. He doesn't talk about middle or high guards. So keep that in mind, that the middle guard category is a bit artificial. It's not something that you get from the book. My opinion, the way I categorize them, and there are very good reasons why, but you won't learn them all from this book, from this video. The point up guards and the point forward guards I've talked about in previous video on the whole system, those are the two that together make the middle guards. Okay, as I said before, you have sword on left or sword on right, point forward, point up, right foot forward, left foot forward, and that gets you the 8 middle guards, right? That combination. 4 point out guards, 4 point forward guards, and could be high, could be low. The 5 that Vadi shows and what he says about them. Okay, think about the point forward guards. He shows us, get it the way around in terms of how he shows it. He shows us this one, close guard with the extended sword, in his words. He shows us this one, shows it from this side first, which is archer. And he shows us this one, which he calls the long guard with the extended sword. Okay. About those, he tells us that this guard, close guard with the extended sword, can strike and return like an arrow. He says that archer range with malice, and he says long defeats the blows, defeat cut and thrust, I think, which is all of them. And then the point up guards, the two he shows lady. Lady is of your front foot, on the right in this case, which he says conceals the length of the blade. And he shows us crown, well, this crown is how he shows it on the left. Which he says is master of binds, right? The 3 then that he doesn't depict but we include in there, this one, which I refer to as long on the right, this one which I refer to as crown on the right, and this one which I refer to as lady on the left. First thing, why do I think that there are 3 extra, right? Why don't I just assume that Vadi's right and there's 5? Why have I added to 8? It's not just because it makes the set neat. You know, there's independent reasons for thinking about all of them. One of the primary reasons requires us to think about, well, actually what's good about the middle guards and why I group them together, which is that you'll note that far more than the low guards, right, which I'm quite open, the middle guards are all nice and defensive, right? They are all, every single one I'm talking about, really closing a very likely line of attack sort of my upper half of the body, right? The low guards cover a line of attack to the legs, which, as we all know, are far less common strikes in longsword. They do happen, but they're much less common in pretty much every longsword system. Whereas these are keeping me nice and defended. That also is reflected in what he says about them, right? He tells us this is master of binds, this is defensive description. These top 2, not so much. This one he says is defeating cuts. There is at least one possible reading where this where lady is that it defeats an extended sword. I think it's probably not that. So that might also be defensive. But then also, in chapter 10, I think in chapter 10, he gives us some specific parrying advice. I'm going to come back to my point, I promise. He gives us some specific parrying advice. And that specific parrying advice basically comes down to whichever side the sword is coming at you, you want to parry with your lead foot to match it. Right? So if the sword's coming here, parry with my left foot forward. Sword's coming here, parry with my right foot forward, or rising, or whatever it happens to be. That advice doesn't seem to be universal, because there's definitely examples described or whatever where there are exceptions, and I might come back to that in a later video. I plan to talk about parrying with elder guards in general. But if we think about parrying to a guard as depicted, there are, outside of the low guards, there are really only a couple of guards that that go over the front foot, right? We've got this one, we've got this one, and we have Falcon, which I'll talk about in a later video. Now the problem is, this and this then become the only two guards that for most cuts we can use to parry an incoming blow and follow that advice. And as I'm sure you can see from in front of me, right, if I'm kind of coming to this position, or even if I'm kind of coming to slightly different versions of this position, it leaves quite a lot open. It's not that you can't use them, and there are certain cuts where they're very effective to cut from, but while if a cut's coming in my head over here, yeah, I can counter thrust, that is an option. Yeah, I can do all this kind of stuff. But actually the simplest way to defend my head is to just adopt this guard, lay it on the left. Likewise, here, right? Now I'm defending my head, right? So that line's covered, but my hands are not defended. So rising strike coming under here, I can't really defend from this position. I can't like chase it going lower and lower. The simplest way is sword down on top of it, which follows his other advice about how to defend against a rising blow. Oh, no, I'm in long on the right. As well as that, then, we have the advice on crown, right? The advice on crown is that this is master of binds. I have a whole article about this that goes into this in some detail in terms of crown and why actually as well that crown is held on the left rather than on the right as depicted. Hopefully you can see that from the shape of my arm. And this master of binds, what is that meaning? Well, generally speaking, what it is I've cut, and I'm now in a bind. My opponent is now cutting into me with Mezzospado, and my easiest way of defending that is to come to crown, right? Same thing happens if I've cut from the left, and we know Vadi wants us to cut from both right and left equally, or at least frequently. So again, we've got this massive gap in Vadi's advice where, well, what am I going to come to? I suppose I could come to this, but this is quite a big movement, the true window. I can't really come to anything else, like Archer or whatever. Archer maybe, right, again, but again, it's quite a weird movement. Crown is the most obvious one, and it seems to flavor the advice. As well as all of that, while he doesn't show the extra 3 in the plays, there are various positions that look exactly like these extrapolated guards, or look like you have to have come to them from one of the extrapolated guards. So for all of those, there is good evidence that that these 3 extra guards exist. We also know that 12 is a magic number in medieval thinking. That means everything. So having 12 guards is a goal. So having these extra 3 guards, 15, would ruin that kind of numerology to it. So there's lots of reasons why I can be sure that those 8 exist. It follows the pattern. The advice is missing something if you don't have those extrapolations, and many of the images imply the existence of the guards, even if they don't do it explicitly. Last point on the variations kind of implied in the guards. I mentioned that this guard is called the long guard with the shortened sword, close guard with the extended sword, right? Really kind of confusing, right? Why isn't this long and close, right? If that's what it is. And of course, this looks like close, like breve, close in Fiore, much more than Fiore's long. I think what we're seeing there is not actually the name of the guard, but actually a description of the variation that he's showing. So this is close guard, sword on the left, point forward over my front foot. Sorry, this is long guard, tell it wrong. This is close guard, sword on the left, right foot forward, on my left, point forward, right? And what we're seeing, I think, is variations of it. So this would be with the sword retracted, this would be with sword extended, right? Likewise, sword extended, sword retracted. And as I said before, all of these are kind of the same guard and within variations. And what you see is, depending on what you're doing with the guard, you'll see a different result to it. So for instance, I'm going to show a picture now of me stabbing someone in the face with a counter thrust using long guard with an extended sword. Last thing I want to talk about today is the sort of attacking versatility from the guards, right? The most obvious thing from the guards that you noted when you first see it, I mentioned it already, is the defensive nature, that they're covering something. I'm going to talk I'm going to talk a bit more about that next video, because there's quite a lot of extra things I want to do to explain how to use that. But the attacking versatility, particularly the point up guards, is something that I think is quite overlooked. The point forward guards, actually, I'll start with them, are much less versatile, right? When you're already extended, you've got limited ability to power cuts. Very obviously, you're powering a thrust, right? You're charging a thrust, you're lined up for it. That obviousness itself makes them worse at delivering thrusts kind of counterintuitively, because my sword is right here, my opponent can see where it's lined up, you know where my sword is, you know where to engage with it. If I'm coming in for the thrust, A, you know where the sword is, so that you defend. B, I'm already kind of extended, at least if I'm out, less so if I'm a bit retracted. But if I'm extended as I'm doing it, that reduces the kind of the speed and force I can put into it, because I'm kind of already arms extended. This is my motion rather than this. When they're retracted, that's less true. That's less true. You've still got the lining up issue, but you've at least got the explosive issue. And likewise, when you're extended, you have very limited ability to charge large cuts. You can do cuts, right? But they're far better, as this guard says, they're far better at quick strikes, right? If you remember from the low guard video, this phrase, strikes him with 10 like an hour, he also uses to describe light blows moving quickly in an earlier passage. So our ability to make quick strikes, targeted locations that are out there, is the main benefit of those guards, right, when they're extended. When retracted, right, we still don't have the ability to charge major heavy blows. They're still kind of good for light blows, and that's true of this. And I think with Archer, the brings malice to my reign is kind of just a flowery way of saying it's quite good at doing tricky stuff. The point up guards, though, are very versatile, right? They're one of the few guards that you can genuinely do all 7 strikes from. So I'll just do it from lady, right? I can cut easily, sending strike on the same side. All the strikes, excuse me, all the strikes on the same side, very straightforward. Strikes on the opposite side, very straightforward. Oh, all good. Same here. I will say, sometimes they require you to not necessarily follow Vadi's edge advice. I'll talk about that in a later video when I talk about middle tempo. It's too much to talk about in one video. But comfortably, any of the point up guards, right, you can attack to any motion, to any position, any guard, any cut. They're also great for thrusts. Similar to what I was talking about low guards, because you're nice and retracted and the point's up here, you can kind of come in with a thrust, place it wherever you feel like, right? Come in, nice thrust, whatever you feel doing, wherever it relaxes, matches to what your opponent's doing. It is really straightforward and easy to do. So all 7 strikes are fairly comfortable from a point up guard. Now, last thing I'll say before I end this video and we move on to the next video. These guards then, they have this nice defensive features, right? We've seen them used as defenses. They cover you quite well. I haven't really talked about that. I'm going to talk about them defensively next video. And they're really versatile. That means that people have a tendency to over-rely on them. And it's not that they're bad, it's not that they don't have fantastic features, but they also have weaknesses, and people kind of forget about those. What I want to talk about next video is how their defensive and offensive versatility kind of goes together, but also what the weaknesses of using those guards excessively are, and how people can then exploit someone if they're using these guards all the time. Thanks for watching.